Hello, and thank you sincerely for taking the time to listen and to hear me out. Honestly, I am nobody special. Currently, just an ordinary homeschool mom with lots of mayhem around me, but also a woman with lots of thoughts, lots of opinions, and lots to say, and probably just a very frustrated voice in the wilderness. Now, despite having a genuinely limited understanding and sincere dislike and distrust of modern technology, I am genuinely grateful that modern technology that is, has fostered the creation of public platforms such as this, where I can have the opportunity to vent, express myself, and opine to someone other than my friends and family. Well, mostly my family, to be exact, who tend to be a captive audience. And even if you vehemently disagree with me, I remain grateful for your time and the chance you've allowed and given me. After all, isn't that the true essence of democracy, a free society, and free speech? I suppose I could have glammed up a bit for this, but this soliloquy is about the truth, the cold, hard truth. And truth be told, this is close to exactly what I usually look like on most days. No real time for me, no fancy clothes, no office attire, though I do really miss going to the office, and no makeup. I am an older, or as I like to say, more mature homeschool mom of a 10-year-old boy. And how do I know he's a boy? Well, besides his aloofness, ants in the pants, fascination with flatulence, and his, for lack of better terms, rambunctious behavior, it's exactly what his birth certificate stipulates. Probably because he was born with a penis between his legs. And it is because of this wonderful bundle of boy that I am here to point out the truth, even if, as Mr. Nicholson poignantly pointed out, most people can't handle it, in efforts and hope that my son has a better future, because the present, as I see it, stinks. I am, however, not here to talk about me or him, but instead about the most recent quote unquote shot heard round the world. Today's modern day D-Day, if you will, at least as far as primetime entertainment, primetime television, and specifically primetime cable news is concerned. Yes, I'm talking about the divorce of Fox News and Tucker Carlson. A divorce where the man was apparently handed his walking papers without even so much as a warning, a discussion, mediation, counseling, a chance of redemption, or trial separation. In my not so humble opinion, it was akin to the husband who comes home from work and finds all his belongings on the front lawn after a typical night with his family the night before. For the most part, an enjoyable evening where they had been discussing and planning their next vacation and perhaps even their future. Fox News Network, or FNN for short, could have also parted ways with any number of vocal and outspoken hosts, which, by the way, were also implicated and named in the recent Dominion suit. But for one reason or another seems to have, at least for now, only cut ties with a select few, including Dan Bongino, who I do not believe was named in the suit, but who does possess the same, dare I say, unfiltered, unapologetic bravado as Mr. Carlson. And of course, with Mr. Carlson himself, in my opinion, in efforts to show exactly who truly has dominion over the airwaves. A sort of silencing of the lambs, if you will. And this may just be the beginning of the end for conservative commentators. Like I said, Fox News has many revered, outspoken hosts with loyal followers. So my question is, who's next on the sacrificial chopping block? If Fox did not consider and not fear, for lack of a better term, the repercussions of parting ways with Tucker, the others will simply be seen as sacrificial casualties of war, a small price to pay, like I said, to silence the dissonant lambs. Anyone care for a glass of Chianti with their fava beans? Mr. Carlson's opinion or opinions may not have been popular among the mainstream, but they were certainly popular among his audience, to the sweet symphony of 3 million viewers per night. And yes, I was one of them, as was my entire family, even though we didn't always share his view or his vantage point. But that holds true for just about anyone. But as I said, I am just a homeschool mom, not Mr. Carlson's defense attorney, even though I personally do defend his right to speak his mind for those who choose to listen. Again, even though many or some may often or frequently choose to agree to disagree. In fact, and now I may be going out on a limb here, especially since I do not care for the man's politics or delivery and honestly have never watched his show, but Mr. Don Lemon, who also was recently ousted from his post, he too is entitled, yes, entitled to these same rights and privileges. Mr. Lemon, I would guess, worked hard, put in his time, and paid his dues to reach and achieve the level of success he had acquired. And it is distasteful and disgraceful that we would knock the seasoned professional off his perch simply because he said something someone found quote-unquote offensive and quote-unquote acerbic. Our cry closet safe space society has become the bull in the china shop, taking down everything and everyone in its path. We try desperately to eliminate parts of our history that we don't like, mind you, judging by our own standards and or by the standards of today. And so we set forth to erase it, history that is, and pretend it never happened. We do this by defacing statues, tearing them down, and changing the names of streets and buildings simply because we'd rather erase our mistakes than be grown-ups about it, own up to them, learn from them, and ensure we don't repeat them. We tend to embrace certain trendy ideologies and chic philosophies of the day or the moment that tend to deny biological, theological, and even scientific integrity. We pretend and portend that certain types of dress up by mostly grown men and women with fetishes are okay, even normal, yet condemn and discourage other types of dress up, even for children, labeling it fill in the blank appropriation, which is again seen and labeled as offensive. Can someone kindly spell hypocrisy or have the woke redefine that too? Additionally, we have adopted a defense mechanism of labeling anyone who doesn't share our point of view as our adversaries, and those who are bold enough to point out the obvious and the elephant in the room as conspiracy theorists. We cannot and should not label people as conspiracy theorists simply because they are challenging our current vantage point, our comfort zone and narrative, with perhaps the use of logic and information rooted in some degree of possible and plausible truth. Edward Snowden, anyone? And hey, even the government recently revealed the authenticity of UFOs, a well-kept, not-so-secret secret, at least for those in the know, since I believe the 1930s, and a recent personal victory for my husband, who I previously thought of and dismissed as nuts. But I'm not just talking about Mr. Carlson here. I am in fact referring to Mr. Don Lemon, in this particular instance anyway. His suggestion that women, and if we are to be transparent, also men over 40 are past their prime is in fact. We may not like it, especially those of us who are in this category, but it is true. And we would realize it if we closed our ears to the ridiculous rhetoric and noise and listened to the truth. Let's face it, every age has its good, its bad, and its ugly. Maturity comes with benefits and disadvantages, as does youth. Nobody, I hope, would encourage a child of 10 to venture off into the neighborhood or on a hike alone. No one would encourage, I hope, a teenager under 18 to fight in a battle, get married, smoke, drink, and the list goes on. So in the same vein, past a certain age, people need to exhibit more caution in general. How we speak, how we act, how we dress, how we present ourselves, and again, the list goes on. Even doctors espouse this point of view. Most doctors would advise persons in certain age groups to proceed with caution, even in participating in basic daily activities, as many may risk a greater risk of injury and the potential for possibly not healing as quickly. In fact, most doctors, because it is true and to avoid lawsuits, caution women, that part of the population that was born with a uterus, to proceed with caution when it comes to childbearing beyond the age of 35. And that logically suggests that at age 35, we the people, women in this case, are heading into middle age, which puts us technically past our prime, especially for childbearing. And that's all that Mr. Lemon said. No need to be insulted or offended. In fact, we should consider ourselves blessed for making it to middle age or old age, and we should wear our years as a badge of honor rather than trying to desperately and pathetically cling on to our misspent youth, a time in our respective histories and lives that no one and nothing can erase, at least not so far, because it happened, and most of us have the indelible memories to prove it, if only to ourselves and to those who were there for the adventure. Personally, despite seeing my first grays at around 17, I am proud of every strand, every laugh line, even the bags under my eyes, even if it does sometimes make it harder to walk past the mirror. Why? Well, because after all, everything about me tells my story, about my journey, one that I am mostly proud of. No one's perfect. So the good, the bad, and the ugly, it's this perspective that allows me to not be offended by Don Lemon placing me in the category, one he also falls into that correctly suggests I am past my prime, at least in some of life's arenas, but does not suggest, as he does not, that I sit in my safe space, suck my thumb, and or give up on life. In fact, many of us, including Mr. Lemon and I'm sure Mr. Carlson, because of our maturity, accomplishments, and a truly profound understanding and appreciation for life, are living or trying to live our best lives ever. So, whether it's Mr. Carlson or Mr. Lemon we are talking about, it's important to remember that we all have said and done things others didn't like, and maybe that we are not so proud of. But these things should not indefinitely define us, and while perhaps unpopular, should not become public fodder for our defamation and or our destruction, especially our professional destruction. Let's face it, the brass at Fox were privy to Tucker's emails well before the lawsuit, just like the powers that be at CNN were familiar with Don Lemon's outspoken, quote-unquote, call it as I see it style. After literally years at their respective stations and positions, now all of a sudden these men are an unacceptable, offensive part of the cast? Why then are others omitted from adhering to these same standards? People perhaps like Mrs. Clinton, who after calling Trump supporters a basket of deplorables, still has her hat in the political arena and commands tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for publishing books and or giving speeches. A right that is brazenly denied to many speakers and voices on the right. And are we to presume her words offend exactly nobody? Based on facts, there's that word again, that would seem to be the most obvious consensus and conclusion. As far as questionable language is concerned, inappropriate perhaps, no doubt, but no more offensive than a former president getting serviced while still in the White House, and then going on to win a second term to boot. Also, no less inappropriate or creepy, if you will, than our current president, a grandfather-like figure, going around sniffing not only women's hair, but the hair of young ladies and even girls. And it's also no more inappropriate than our current commander-in-chief calling people fats or dog-faced pony soldiers, even son of a bitch. Yet, as of his recent announcement, followed by many endorsements, people are willing to give him a second chance. As I see it, a second chance at running our nation further into the ground and making us an even bigger laughingstock across nations around the globe. As far as calling women yummy, whether it's true or not, again, perhaps a bit inappropriate, but offensive? Is being called yummy really that offensive? Especially to women who put lots of effort into and pride themselves on being attractive, many for the opposite sex. Many of us in our middle ages and well into our golden years still love a compliment. Who doesn't love a compliment? In fact, as a high school friend of mine once said, be offended when they stop calling you yummy or whistling when you walk by. And ladies, which one of us hasn't referred to a good-looking, buff man with great status as delicious or yummy? In fact, I've personally seen many women literally throw themselves and grovel at the feet, not to mention at the crotch of successful, established men for something as paltry as a meal, and not even at a fancy restaurant. As a confident woman who knows who she is, where she is in life, and what exactly she stands for, I am insulted that women would take umbrage at something so trivial. But think of something such as Cardi B's very profane song with disgusting, debasing, and demeaning lyrics as something that is cutting edge and liberating. Mr. Carlson, and perhaps maybe even Mr. Lemon, were not only entertaining, but perhaps were often the voice for their respective audiences, offering them a platform for their views and validating their otherwise unheard and often disregarded opinions. And so, since we're talking about the truth, I confess that while I'm disappointed, I'm not surprised. In fact, though I did not expect the left to go after their own, it was sadly only a matter of time and convenience for Mr. Carlson, and perhaps others like him. Stay tuned, as I've personally experienced this narrative before. It's exactly what happened in Canada years, yet not really so long ago, when rebel news and rebel media was forced off the air and into the clandestine depths of underground truth-telling, previously known as journalism and reporting. Sorry, folks, but we can't just redefine or eliminate things we don't like or people we disagree with. Rather than behaving like adults and taking initiative to switch channels or turn off the TV, truly giving power to the people, a fundamental foundation and tenet of democracy, we instead bellow out a battle cry that goes straight for the jugular and calls for the humiliation, destruction, and dare I say crucifixion of those in the so-called opposition. So much for diversity, at least diversity of expression and opinion, especially and ironically from those on the left that clamor on endlessly about diversity, equity, and inclusion.